Comrade Joyce Kakane, who's still alive, Winnie Mandela, and Samson Ndo is still alive, introduced us to the Freedom Charter. The Freedom Charter literature by that time was banned. And of course, it was made clear to us that we wouldn't be politically involved and wouldn't be trained as underground members of the then banned MK before the decision until we internalized and understood the values and principles of the ANC, which are firmly based on the Freedom Charter. This is our history, a history that we must never forget, so we can fully appreciate how we have come and how much further we still have to go to truly build a just and equitable South Africa for all. It is fitting, comrades, as we near the end of June, a month when we both recall the struggle of the youth of 1976 and confront the challenges that today's youth face, that we are hosting this intergenerational dialogue. Today's event, commemorating the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter, provides us with an opportunity, together with young leaders of today, to draw lessons, not mechanically, but dynamically, to guide the development of strategies and tactics that will better the lives of our people and create a safe and prosperous South Africa. South Africa, drawing on the collection of demands for inclusion in the Freedom Charter, the hosting of the Congress of the People, and in the subsequent debates in the adoption of the Freedom Charter by the African National Congress, I would like to share 7 lessons. Reading the moment was recognizing that there was an imperative to both consolidate the mobilization and solidarity across races, as well as to provide a vision of a future without apartheid. And so the idea of the Freedom Charter was born. The ANC was then able to seize the moment, to consolidate the gains of the Defiance campaign, develop organizational and social basis of the Congress movement as a mass movement, clarify its political policies and principles, unite the emerging trade union movement and women's organization, and enable the Congress movement to assume a fully non-racial character. The third lesson is about the significance of connecting with the people. Before the Defiance campaign, the ANC was not a mass movement. However, between this campaign and the Congress of the People, organizations blossomed under ANC branches, and they multiplied. Freedom volunteers were recruited and organized committees to collect demands and elect delegates to the Congress of the People. The local Congress of the People's Committee drew in a range of social, cultural, religious, sports, and educational traders, youth groups into the work of activities of the Congress of the Movement. The process enabled ANC to advance into rural areas, making invaluable contacts with influential rural individuals, including the chiefs and the priests, who some of them had left us. This period also saw the formation of the South African so-called Colored People's Organization, the South African Congress of Democrats, comprising white people who oppose apartheid, the Federation of the South African Women's, and the South African Congress of Trade Unions. Since then, the ANC has placed a strong emphasis on the mass-based, non-racial, multi-class, and broad change nature. Even when it was banned and forced out of the country, the ANC recognized the mass mobilization is one of the 4 pillars of the struggle which required to overthrow the government of the racist government of South Africa. When the United Democratic Front was launched in 1983, it embarked on a 1 million signature campaign, enabling it to go door to door across the country, collect signatures, opposing a divide and rule strategy to set up tricameral parliaments. We thus have a rich history of door-to-door work, state committees, social work, reaching out to our people wherever they are. But today, we have stopped doing that. We use WhatsApp, loud hailers, and T-shirts distribution to promote the African National Congress. Comrades, do we still have a mass base? And if so, how do we reconnect with them? And how do we organize ourselves to reconnect with them. Which brings me to the next lesson. The fourth lesson is about the necessity for a strong organization founded on political consciousness and discipline, not resources. Let me read to you extracts from a pamphlet circulated amongst Indian youth in the run-up to the Congress of the People. I quote, what is required of a freedom volunteer? You are not being required to give up your job. You are not required to give up your job or to leave your studies. You pledge yourself to undertake regular, active, and intensive work for the Congress of the People and for resistance to the apartheid policy of the racist government. You will be asked to take a pledge to serve your country and your people to the best of your ability and in accordance with policy of the program of the organization to which you belong. You will be asked to study the political and economic life of the country, and classes will be organized for that study. To be a member of the African National Congress requires high standards of self-discipline, political consciousness, and selfless dedication to the cause. As a result of their commitment to a strong and disciplined organization, ANC members were also were able to withstand exile, detention, working in the underground, living in the military camps, and preventing the infiltration of the enemy forces. In addition, mobilization in the 1950s and even in the 1980s did not require a massive outlay of funds and financial inducement to get people to act. Did not depend on finances. More often than not, we dug into our own pockets. We really dug into our own pockets. We'll say we're going to a rally, we all collected and hired taxis. But now when we want to go anywhere, the organization must provide. The organization must provide food, must provide t-shirts. It was not like that before. But now that's what people want and demand. When I was arrested in 1969, I was detained and in solitary confinement for about 12 months, together with Winnie Mandela and Samson Doe and Sempolo and Joseph Kekane. However, the political education we received in the underground from comrades like Winnie Mandela, Joyce Kekane, Samson Doe, and Sempolo enabled us to withstand torture and repression. The Freedom Charter, which was taught to us in the underground, was a beacon of hope that we are required to use to mobilize communities, to do underground work, and to be ready to join the arms wing of Mkoto. Today, we require ANC members to take an oath to enhance the quality of our members and cadres. All ANC members are required to complete a foundation course in political education. We made sure that that is compulsory because since we came back into the country in 1990, the ANC was unbanned. There was no mass political organization within the African National Congress. But today we are saying that we should ensure that every member of the ANC goes through the foundation course of the ANC so that they understand the values, the principles, and the objectives of our organization. Can we say that our activists and cadres stand proud to be ANC members, stand confident in holding their own in the battle of ideas, relating to people on the ground, and continuing the commitment to build strong local units to carry on the struggle for a non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous South Africa? And how much of this decline in the organization has contributed to a decline of support? How do we undertake organizational work and mass campaign in today's South Africa? Let us reflect on this in our intergenerational dialogue today. The fifth lesson is about the importance of unifying the minimum program of action. During the 1950s, the apartheid regime sought to divide the different racial groups and classes. That is why when we were dumped in Deep Kloof, we were dumped in the Zulu section. But our neighbors were Sotus, others were so-called Shanganis by that time, and others called vendors. We could not speak to each other. We were not allowed to integrate with each other. The ANC understood that to overthrow and defeat the apartheid regime, it needed to unite different racial groups and classes around a common problem. The Freedom Charter was able to draw the maximum number of forces in society around a minimum yet radical political problem, drawing a line between aspirations of the majority of the people and the policies of an apartheid minority regime. The Congress movement also understood the relationship between achieving national liberation and more radical demands of the working class for socialism. Comrades Raymond Satma and Jeremy Cronin, when compiling a book, 30 Years of the Freedom Charter, interviewed Comrade Christmas Tinto, who was a volunteer in Chief in London. He came in from Cape Town, and also an organizer for SACTU. We talked about being two cards-carrying member of the struggle. You must have a card for SACTU, of a trade union, and you must have a card of a national oppression. ANC and SACTU both. This was because at the time, Satma and Cronin argued, although the charter was not a program of the working class, it nevertheless reflected their interests. Also, the charter reflected the interests of the working class. The Freedom Charter reflected the minimum demands of the progressive bourgeoisie and the minimum of the working class. The bourgeoisie, meaning that those who own means of production, will not strive for more than is contained in the charter, while the working class will have sufficient clauses and aspire beyond its demand, they argued. The Freedom Charter also introduced a degree of ideological uniformity and cohesion with the liberation movement that did not previously exist. After the Freedom Charter was adopted at the Congress of the People, it had to be adopted by the individual organizations that attended, including the African National Congress, the Africanists in the ANC, who were led by Robert Sobukwe, broke away to form PAC in 1959. They objected to the clause that the land belongs to all who live in it, both white and black. And others like Z.K. Matthews, referencing the clauses of their nationalism, felt it was a socialist document. Today, comrades, we find ourselves in a garden of national unity, with liberal conservative forces on the one hand, in the face of increasingly strident radical left, but actually right-wing populist demands from opposition parties outside the JNU and the other. Should we not be revisiting the values of a minimum program that can unite the broadest number of people? The sixth lesson is about being able to listen and accurately reflect the views of the people while providing a cohesive and progressive vision of the future. Let us return to look at the documents produced in the run-up to the Congress of the People. A circular issued in January 1955 to all ANC volunteers has a section on how a meeting should be conducted. It reads, I quote, the volunteers should carefully write down the demands and grievances that are voiced. They must encourage people to talk of small things and not to speak generally of unjust laws or oppression. At the end of the meeting, all the demands of the people should be read out by the volunteer, and the meeting be asked to vote for or against their inclusion in the Freedom Charter. Thus, the Freedom Charter gave the space to ordinary people, irrespective of race, ethnic group, language, religion, class, educational status, personal beliefs, values, and organizational affiliation, to speak about their hopes and dreams for the future. The process reflected a deep respect to the views and aspirations of the people. The drafters of the Freedom Charter were then able to take the demands of ordinary people and link them to the need for racial transformation of economic and political structures of the time. Content was able to be given to the abstract goals of a national liberation and self-determination of the class of the African masses. And the Congress slogan was freedom in our lifetime, by articulating what that freedom would mean in practical terms, in various spheres of the life of South Africa. As the ANC president at the time, Chief Albert Luthuli argued in an interview with Drum magazine, The Charter is a direct outcome of the harsh, oppressive, and unjust conditions of the time. It is not perfect, but practical and relevant, reflecting the deep yearnings for security and human dignity. Even then, some of the demands were solved for the future. For example, the demand that the state shall help the peasants with implements, seed, tractors, and dams to save the soil and assist tillers. We talk about both the need to advance farmers and to conserve the land for the future generation. The seventh and last lessons that we need to learn is about non-racialism and non-sexism, what today we more commonly refer as a gender equality. An organization that is 118 years old develops and changes over time. The ANC is different now than at these formative years, that is 1952. The adherence to principles formulated in the Freedom Charter of inclusivity and racial, ethnic, and gender took many years to achieve. Through the Congress of the People campaign, an evidence-based movement evolved into a fully fledged national movement, assuming a non-racial character that was broadly representative of the South African population. Comrade President of the Youth League, Veterans League, its character is non-racial. You can see immediately when we get into the Veterans League, we have comrades of Indian descent, so colored, white people, and black people. It's the only structure that is the true character of the ANC. And we made it deliberately. And we will make sure that it happens like that within the Veterans League. And we want the Youth League to do that as well. We want the Women's League to do that as well. And so that's what we are requiring that should be done. The Freedom Charter also enabled the Congress leadership to establish a structured relationship among the various components of the liberation forces in South Africa. The different national groups, women organizations, trade union movement, and Communist Party based on a common and shared vision of an alternative and racially different disorder. And before the rise of feminism in the next decade, the Freedom Charter called for equal pay for all and for equal work for all, as well as crashes and maternity leave and full pay for working mothers. It recognized also, and in particular, the brunt that the women face when, for example, it calls for free medical care and hospitalization, with special care for mothers and young children. The struggle for gender equality encompassed the concept of the triple oppression, referring to racial oppression, class oppression, and gender oppression. And women were also oppressed at home. They did not have triple oppression, four oppressions. They were oppressed as a racial group, oppressed as women, and oppressed as even at home. Today, we should be asking ourselves how far we advance to address these three forms of oppression and the intersectionality between them, especially in the face of gender-based violence pandemic. These are the 7 lessons. The Freedom Charter became a beacon of hope that the treason trial judges could not extinguish that guided the determination of the struggle as it shifted to armed struggle and the difficult times of the 1960s-1970s. Through the efforts of the youth organizations, working with the ANC underground, NUSAS, AZASO, the forerunner of SASCO, and COSAS, the Freedom Charter was popularized again in the late 1970s and 1980s. In February 1984, these 3 students' organizations launched the Education Charter campaign based on the clause, "The door of learning and culture shall be open," to formulate alternatives to apartheid education and create a basis for students' mobilization. This campaign also led to the emergence of Progressive Teachers Union, organized under the National Union of Educators of South Africa. Thus, in 1994, when we achieved our first phase of our national democratic revolution, we included a preamble to the Freedom Charter in our constitution, whose clauses remain as our aspirational goal. However, putting something on paper does not make it happen. To advance the aspirational goals of the Freedom Charter now, now entrenched in our national constitution, we must understand the current balance of forces to determine the most effective set of strategies and tactics. Today, comrades, we are talking of a dialogue. Let us revisit the experience of the Freedom Charter and examine its clauses and consider how we should review and refine our strategy and tactics to achieve them. Our struggle remains an unfinished struggle. One of the youth of today needs to continue. The Veterans League here will support the next generation. It is about passing on the baton. We don't want to hold on to power. We want to pass on the baton. And want to see the Youth League being a formidable force that will take this country forward. Thank you.